we see a Harvard professor speaking in China. He's an expert on China, and he said that he's warning of a devastating China-Japan war. On the radio show today, Alex Jones talked to historian Margaret McMillan about current parallels to events that led up to World War I.
Thank you so much for coming on, Professor. And I want to get into the report I saw at the London Independent. Is it 1914 all over again? We are in danger of repeating the mistakes that started World War I, says a leading historian. So thanks for coming on and tell us about the parallels and your concern.
Well, there's some things that concern me. I mean, I don't think history ever repeats itself. I think we get similarities, but the conditions are so different. I mean, the 21st century is very different from 100 years ago. But I think what is concerning is we seem to have nationalist rivalries between countries. You have a rivalry developing, as you were mentioning earlier on, in the South China Seas, which has the potential for sparking off further tensions and conflicts. You have international ideologies. In the years before 1914, there were international ideologies of anarchists, for example. Today you have international ideologies of religious ideologies or ultra-religious ideologies. So I think we live in a slightly turbulent time. We have globalization. Both ages are very globalized, and I think you have people worried about the impact of globalization, perhaps turning to their homes and feeling rather defensive. So I think that there are similarities. I mean, I don't think we're bound to end up in the same way they did in 1914, but you always have to be careful.
I forget the exact quote, but basically history doesn't repeat, but it kind of rhymes. Who was it said that?
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain. And humans act the same, even though we have almost godlike weapons and technology now. Would be godlike, you know, to the ancients, Professor. But if you look at global crises, currency devaluations, armies lining up on borders, groups not compromising. Really, I see the West driving conflict, and I'm obviously not a fan of what Russia and China do. I'm an American, and I'm a Westerner. But at the same time, I really see the West as filling the shoes of the villain in many respects compared to our position in the past. What's your take on that?
Well, I think human nature doesn't really change that much. I mean, I think we like to think we're a lot more sophisticated than the caveman. I'm not sure we are. I mean, I think we're still driven, at least in part, by emotions and fears. And I think what's really dangerous is when people lack, or nations lack, the ability to see things from the other person's point of view. And so what nations do to defend themselves and what we do to defend ourselves as individuals, we may think we're just being defensive, we're just looking out for ourselves, but that may really look like aggression from the other side. And I think that's when it gets dangerous, when you fail to understand what the other person might be thinking. And I think what's also dangerous, and you see it with individuals and you see it with nations again, is when their pride gets involved and when their prestige gets involved. I mean, I think an analogy is the members of gangs, who are, to me, rather like knights in the Middle Ages. They'd rather die than be dishonored. And so I think this is a perennial strain in human nature. Now, we've got a more sensible side, and I think we've got a more reasonable side, and we've got a side where we do reach out, we do try and understand each other. So, I never like to think that history is going to repeat itself, but I think we should be warned, we should be careful about being too complacent.
He said there's simmering anger in China that's highlighted by Japan's historical revisionism, which refuses to accept responsibility for the Second World War in their textbooks and schools. And he says, there's also the dispute over these islands. And then he also points out how the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe just recently visited a shrine in Tokyo honoring 14 war criminals who were subsequently executed for war crimes by the Allies. Now, of course, remember that waterboarding was one of those crimes for which we executed Japanese war criminals. But we brought over a lot of war criminals, both Nazi and Japanese war criminals, to the United States as part of Project Paperclip. And we're now seeing fallout from that from Army veterans who were then experimented on by these very same Nazis.
The facts are in. The studies are legion. Sodium fluoride and other members of the fluorine family that are added to Western water supplies are devastating the health and cognitive ability of the people that drink it. So the question is, why are the social engineers adding it to the water? Simple. Dumb down the host population that the parasitic technocracy is feeding on. We developed the Fluoride Shield to be the highest quality, highest standards, because I use it every day and my family uses it every single day. Let's take a closer look at the ingredients that make up this special proprietary formula. Tamarind has been celebrated for its ability to immobilize toxic fluoride residues, while zeolites have a long history of attracting and holding toxic compounds. Enter fulvic acid, an excellent cleansing agent. Then we added the highest quality shilajit, a rare compound that is collected from the high mountains of the Himalayas. We topped it all off with the powerhouse herb cilantro that is intended to mobilize fluoride and other dangerous compounds for removal from the body. And the final touch to energize this formula is our proprietary nascent iodine. And as always, consult your physician as well, because that is important. And finally, Fluoride Shield, Survival Shield, and all the products at InfoWarsLife.com grew out of my quest to try to find the very best compounds from God's cornucopia to protect myself and my family. And from our research, I believe we are bringing you the best, highest quality products. And you have that commitment from Alex Jones and the entire InfoWars crew.